be doing a simple watercolor galaxy to start off with. I'm challenging myself by using some colors I'm not particularly comfortable with, such as pink. I do love pink, however, I seldom paint with it. Here I'm using the Arteza Gouache, and I recently got this set. I'm very impressed with the range of colors, although it can be overwhelming. But pushing myself out of my comfort zone here, I've got Pearl Bubblegum, Rose, and Peach Red. Believe it or not, it's actually quite neon, unlike how the bottle shows there, or tube. I'll slap a picture on in just a moment. We've also got Violet as well as Lilac. Now, personally, I do use purple quite a bit in my paintings. Typically, violet I'll use for shadows and pieces. And then I thought I might just grab some Pearl Emerald as well. It might be interesting to put some pops of green in there. So I'd like to start off my watercolor galaxy paintings. Well, this is actually gouache, but gouache can behave like watercolor. I'll go ahead and just lay some water down on the paper, wherever I see fit. It doesn't have to be in any particular way or order. It just kind of, the painting just kind of leaps out itself when you're doing it in this way. Next, I'm going to go ahead and grab some of my lighter colors, such as the Peach Red. It's very bright, as you can see on the brush there. And we're just going to see how it behaves with the water on the paper. Now immediately I'm noticing this doesn't seem to be hopping out as much as I've seen with other colors in this set, but we'll see what we can do here. So now I've just got some of that lighter color laid down. I'm going to go ahead and grab a darker color such as the rose and see how it mixes in there. I quite like the color combination there. Let's go ahead and add some more water to try and get this paint moving. Now, of course, with gouache can be more opaque and more stable on the page. I'd say it doesn't necessarily leap about like watercolor really would. But the reason I'm using gouache is the intensity of the color. Granted, watercolor can be quite intense, especially if you have a highly pigmented paint. However, I just tend to like doing gouache for paintings as such, in addition to the fact that at the end I'm going to be adding some alcohol to the painting, just getting it on my brush and tapping it into the painting. And I notice that the gouache tends to have a much quicker reaction to the alcohol versus watercolor in my experience. And that could very well just be because the watercolor paint that I use isn't necessarily the greatest. It's one of my first sets that I got a few years ago, and it's nearly run out by now, but I'm trying to finish using it up before I invest in another set. So as I'm going along here, you'll notice I'm trying to keep the lighter colors next to darker colors. It builds contrast in the painting. However, you can do this just as you want to. See, that violet really hops. It just wants to be everywhere here. And you guys can share, which you prefer, gouache or watercolor. I find they can be very similar in some cases just with how they behave, and you can really do a lot with either one. If you wanted to use watercolor in a more pigmented way, you definitely can just water it down less. With gouache, it goes on opaque, but if you water it down, as I said, it can behave much like watercolor. If I find myself running out of a particular color in my watercolor set, I'll just hop over to my gouache set and use it instead. I think we need some more pink in here. Now what I'll like to do sometimes is once it's pooled up a little bit in one color, I'll add some water to the edge of it and it'll help it spread around on the page. Now this is interesting how it's going along so far. Just seeing how the pinks react, because I have not used any of these colors before, of the pinks at least. Violet I'll use just about all the time. I typically am comfortable working with greens and reds and blues, more earthy tones, nothing quite quite like this. Now I don't want this to dry too quickly, while I'm going along, just because once I add the alcohol, we need it to be jumpy, if that's a good way to describe it. But this is just a fun, really simple, fast piece that I'm doing right here. Just trying to see how these paints work together. And painting really can be, a fun experience. I know I sound a little bit like Bob Ross right now, but it doesn't have to be perfect every time. You're just supposed to enjoy yourself. Really, any creative pursuit should be that way. As long as you're enjoying yourself, that's what really matters. And enjoying yourself doesn't always mean that it turns out exactly how you want it to. It just means that you find satisfaction in the act of creating. Now I just have a little cup here with some rubbing alcohol in it. I just pick it up at the grocery store for about 50 cents or so, and it works wonderfully for creating these beautiful cells in watercolor or gouache paintings. It repels the paint. You can get some different and interesting effects doing this. It's probably one of my favorite parts. And what I'm doing is just tapping on the brush after I get some alcohol on there. See, it just runs from it. Now, what would happen if I went ahead and tried to add more paint? Oh no, I kept the alcohol in the brush and it's repelling the paint on the palette. That's okay. Now what if I just add the paint back in here? What would that do? Well, I see what it's doing. It's not moving around much. Really doesn't have much else where to go. I think that's an interesting look. Just add a little more alcohol, I'd say. Now I'm noticing that neon pink doesn't really want to move, and maybe that's just because it dried up a little. So why don't we add some more pink just in this spot and see how it reacts to that alcohol. And of course I'm just rinsing my brush off after dipping it in the alcohol versus the paint. Okay, there we go, it's moving. See? Just gotta work more quickly. Now I'd say this piece is almost done here. I might go in afterwards with a white gel pen just to add some little stars or flecks of light, whatever you want to add. I think it can look quite nice. You can also do the same if you don't have a gel pen. Just go ahead and use, some white paint that you've got. Sometimes I'll even take some old craft acrylic paint and just add it, in with a liner brush, and that could be my stars. You can create with anything you have. Just adding some darker blobs of the violet in different spots. I really do love the color. Maybe just a tad more of that electric pink. I really want to get myself using that. Really make it pop. Just dipping in some alcohol, seeing if I can move it in a concentrate place. A little bit there. Alright, well I'm just going to go ahead and let this dry a moment, and I'll be right back with that gel pen. Alright, so now that the paint is mostly dry, I'm going to go ahead and take this Jelly Roll pen. I just got it at Hobby Lobby for a few dollars for a pack of 4. Now again, you don't have to use a white gel pen. This is actually my first set I've gotten, and I've been painting or drawing nearly my entire life, but I always saw other people use it and I wanted to give it a shot. I find these pens work best by just using light pressure on the page. I tend to be someone that's very heavy-handed when I draw. However, if you push too hard, the ink's not going to come out too well and you might dent the paper a little bit. So I'm just going to go in and start by adding some little dots here and there. And really, it can be wherever you want them to be. This is your painting. Do it however you would like. I'm just going to be going through here for a little moment. I really like to add it into some of the darker areas to add pops of light in there, and I love the contrast that these paints made together using light and dark next to each other. It can really make your work pop. This can take some time, but don't overthink where you're placing the stars in here. Sometimes I'll even add little cross star shapes. Granted, stars aren't really that shape, they're just balls of burning gas, but that's okay. We're almost done here, I'd say. And of course, using that much water and liquid, the paper's buckled a little bit, but by taping it down, we can minimize that. And once it's fully dry, sometimes I'll be a little crazy and just set my paintings under a book or a few heavy books. I've got plenty of them laying around, and that'll help them flatten out. As long as the paint, of course, is fully dry, you wouldn't want to ruin your book nor ruin your painting. And of course, if you're going to be framing any of your pieces, they'll sit nice and flat regardless. Maybe just a few more here. I just like to do little concentrated spots all throughout the piece. And there you have it. You have a purple, pink galaxy painting. You can use whatever colors you like, but again, I was challenging myself today. I'm not quite comfortable painting with pinks yet. However, I would love to use them more. Thank you for watching, and I'll have a picture of the finished piece right after.